Welcome to another edition of the Dean Legge Show. We're going to go right into it. Georgia, South Carolina. We've talked about that a lot, and I'll still reference that during this show. But with Kentucky on the schedule and Georgia needing to be there's no margin for error now. You can't lose any more games unless there's complete chaos in college football. Georgia really needs to buckle down offensively in particular and perform. I talked to a lot of people running up to this show, as well as what we were hearing, which is going to be on the website on Monday or maybe later tonight, Sunday night. It'll be really late if it is. So check back Monday on dogpost.com. I'll try to include a link in this show below on YouTube. But a lot of it really came down to just really bad play in terms of execution. Whenever you turn the ball over 4 times, I mean that was the thing. I think people are really trying to. I don't want to say make it something it's not, but the big lead here is that when you turn the ball over 4 times, that's just not. That's only happened 3 times this decade, and the other 2 times Georgia lost as well. The 2015 game against Florida, that had a -4 turnover ratio. The Missouri game in 2013, the only time Missouri's beaten Georgia since they've joined the league, that was a -4 turnover ratio. Georgia stuck in there pretty good with Missouri that day, but they just could not overcome. I think it was a pick six from Aaron, and just giving the ball away 4 times. You have to respect the football. I don't mind interceptions. I don't think they're the end of the world. Pick sixes are tough because you don't get to play defense, and with a defense as good as Georgia's, you definitely want to be on the field to try to prevent scores. South Carolina really was quite impotent yesterday offensively. I mean, even with Helinski in there, which they were better, they weren't exactly knocking the door down on scoring. So I just, I think it's a game that you try your best to move on from if you're Georgia. I think the people inside the program are not going to have a problem doing that because they get to go to work literally. I mean, when you go to your job, you have to perform your job. This is not the bulk of the audience that watches this, except for the people who watch it, of course, that are on the team or in the program. This is not y'all's job, and so you can fret about it. You can't change anything. There's a lot of hand wringing. That's part of college football. I mean, I don't know the result yet, but I'm sitting here watching the Jets, a really bad football team, take it to the Dallas Cowboys, and this thing's either going to come down to the wire or the Cowboys are going to lose. And I've only watched so much of it, like I say, as I've been sort of monitoring it. But yesterday with Georgia, um, I did not think South Carolina played well, and so I think that goes to show they deserve even more credit to me because they stuck in there and they fought and they hung around. This is a lot like the loss Georgia had to Georgia Tech in 2014, also an overtime game in Sanford Stadium. But Tech stuck around. They were not the better team that day. It didn't feel like it, at least, but they figured out how to win. And in talking with a lot of people, I mean, the discussion of coaching decisions has come up. It depends on who you talk to about that part. Plenty criticism of Kirby and just decisions in general. But I think the biggest issue to me, as it relates to this game, were 2 things. One of them is correctable for sure, which is that the team, I don't. Looking back on it, there was a lack of urgency about the game. There was a lack of understanding that, when you play South Carolina in Athens, that's a little different. That's a little bit like playing Auburn in Athens. There's a lot of kids from Georgia on the team. There's a lot of guys that are, particularly at Carolina, that felt like they got passed over. This is Carolina's first win in Athens since 2011, so it has been a long time, and they haven't exactly made a great winning streak in Athens, but they have played well in Athens, I will say, to me at least. I mean, 2017, that was one of the better games Georgia had to that point in the season. I mean, South Carolina played pretty well, and obviously in 2000. 15 was an odd game in that a very bad player played really well and Georgia blew South Carolina out. So anomalies happen. The question I think people need to ask themselves is, is this performance an anomaly? Is it an outlier? Or is this indicative of a trend? I think to some degree, when you start talking about trends, the offense has got to score more often, I guess you could say. I mean, against Notre Dame, they were plotting. They dominated that game. And I wouldn't say they dominated South Carolina, but they certainly played better than South Carolina, even though, again, neither team really played very well. It was not a pretty game. But against Notre Dame, so the two of the last three games for Georgia, if you want to get concerned about things, everyone's pointing at the offense. What's wrong with the offense? What's wrong with the offense? There's not a lot of explosion from this team. That's just not there. And they're very plodding. They're very much like a heavyweight. And they're fighting sometimes bantamweights. And you would think that you'd be in good shape there because of the size advantage and the ability to just lean on someone. But when you make your own mistakes, which, make no mistake, I mean, Jake Fromm threw 3 interceptions. One of them was totally on Tyler Simmons. I mean, you can't have a ball hit you in the hands right in front of your face and not only not catch it, but then just like knock it sort of in the air long enough to where the kid from Carolina made his 3rd interception of the day. I mean, he won't have another 3 interception day in his life. I mean, that would be bizarre to have that happen again. So that's not going to work. Fromm was off on the other 2 throws. I thought that, again, the kid from Carolina made a great play on the pick 6, but it was just, it was a bad play from Jake Fromm. And I think that the other thing, and you can comment below about this if you have something to say, I wish you would. Jake Fromm is not above criticism. And I think he would tell you that. And that's the important part here is people fall so much in love with their players or their favorite player or their favorite coach, Kirby Smart, whoever it may be, Adele McGee or Sam Pittman or, Mark Richt, that they lose sight that criticism is not a bad thing to have in life. I mean, sometimes some of us need to lose weight. Some of us need to pick up around the house more or whatever it is, or need to do our jobs better. There's nothing wrong with saying stuff. There's something wrong with going around like a crazy person and doing things that way. Jake Fromm has been a very good player for Georgia for a long time, for 2.5 years. He's going to continue to be a good player for Georgia, I feel certain. That more than 30% of his interceptions have come in 2 games in October, on October 12th or October 13th, is, very strange, but also a pattern at this point. So the other part of the pattern is that Georgia picks it up pretty well, typically after getting they didn't get their brains beat in, but after losing games. I mean, you look at the, with the exception of the Texas Sugar Bowl, every time Georgia has lost a game in the sort of modern part of the Kirby Smart era, they've come back the following week and won or played well winning. And, in the case of the Auburn game in 2017, obviously came back 3 or 4 games later, beat Auburn by as bad as Auburn beat them, and then went on to play for the national championship. Last year, losing decisively to LSU, a 19-point loss, and then a week off and a bunch of hand-wringing the entire time, and then go down and hand the Gators, I think it was a 19-point loss. So, and then back that up a week later with a top 10 win at Kentucky. Nothing's going to be easy from this point forward in this season. I don't anticipate that Georgia will have trouble with Kentucky, but I didn't anticipate they would have trouble with South Carolina either. So I think at this stage, you want to trust but verify, so to speak. You want to make sure that the reason that you trust this team will be what you see on Saturdays. And for the most part, that's been the case the vast majority of Kirby Smart's time at Georgia. And let me lay that out in this way. In 2016 on, his whole time, they have tried to be a very physical, win the line of scrimmage type of program. And when he first got to Georgia, he identified immediately that they did not have the body types on the offensive line to do that. It did not prevent them from still trying to play that type of offense. The defense at Georgia, with the exception probably of just the Mississippi game in 2016, I mean, even Auburn in 2017, I mean, they allowed 40 points, I mean, but it wasn't like the Ole Miss game where they sort of just didn't show up at all. The defense has never really had an issue being physical. You're still talking about a defense that's just not allowed a lot of yardage, not allowed a lot of points of anything. And so the defense is certainly very good. And in order to win the SEC, they're going to have to be good. I mean, you look at Florida. Florida's defense is going to be difficult for Georgia to handle. So that means Georgia's defense is going to have to absolutely shut down the Florida offense. That shouldn't be asking too much considering how good Georgia's offense is and how skeptical at least I am about Florida's ability to score against a good defense. We'll see. Florida is definitely much improved over this 7-week period or 8-week period of college football. You have to think that the multiple buys, the 3 buys, are really helping the Gators. But Georgia's going to be favored to win that game. And right this second, I still think they win that game. And, I mean, they're going to be favored pretty much from here on out. They might not be favored at Auburn, but even that I don't know. So everything's in front of you. But Kirby, he's not perfect. The thing he was sort of most disappointed by, if you want to call it that, was definitely what he was most disappointed by yesterday were the turnovers. And, I don't want to be dismissive and say exclusively that turnovers happen because it is true they do. But at the same time, the fumble underneath center, I mean, that just cannot happen. You're going to have bad throws. You're going to have bad receiver action at times. But getting under center and you're at the 30-yard line and it really felt like you were about to control the game from that point forward and just fumbling that ball away, which I believe was on first down with all the momentum, that was just inexcusable. And I know that Trey Hill had a tough game on his hands on Saturday, but the center quarterback exchange, even though Georgia's in shotgun, I mean, certain things are just not allowable, and that right there, that's just a total gift for the other team. And you gave away 3 points there for sure, 3 points, no question, and as a result, probably the win, because South Carolina wasn't going to score. I mean, they could barely move the ball, so that was a bad situation right there. But Kirby's been through this plenty. I've been around the block a while myself, and I think that you have to recognize that you just played like shit, because they did. They did not play well. South Carolina didn't play well either. Now they did not, but they won, so that gets masked over a little bit. But just like the Notre Dame game had nothing to do with the South Carolina game, the Kentucky, Florida, Auburn, Texas A&M, Tech slate will have nothing to do with the South Carolina game. And it's about being more crisp on offense, functioning better. It's about limiting mistakes, something that Georgia's done a pretty good job of over time. And then also, it's about the defense also capitalizing when the ball is flopping out there in the air. I really did feel like there were a couple of times, one with J.R. Reed for sure, maybe someone else. I think it might have been J.R. twice, but definitely J.R. once, where the ball was just floating out there and you felt like someone's going to get that ball and they did not pick it off. Turning it over 4 times is really bad, but a turnover margin of -4 is horrendous. You could have survived. Every person I've probably talked with, 6 people so far, and they were all in agreement that if Georgia turns it over twice and not 4 times, they win the game. It's probably true, even with the pick 6, because you're just forfeiting points. I mean, only one of those possessions was Georgia turning the ball over in its own territory. 3 of the 4 were within the South Carolina 35-yard line. Now, no one's going to win those games. Alabama probably would not beat South Carolina if it had 4 turnovers. So this is about protecting the ball, doing a good job, getting to Athens ready to play against Kentucky. South Carolina's done. Doesn't matter. The game's over. South Carolina, the likelihood of them winning the East probably goes away on Saturday, and when they play Florida. I wouldn't be stunned if Carolina beat Florida, but I'd be surprised. So even still, Carolina has 2 losses already in the SEC with Alabama and Missouri. So Carolina is, back in the pack. You just need to worry about you. They don't need to lose anymore. Georgia just needs to win. It's very basic. You take Kentucky completely seriously. They've got a very rough offense. What you saw in the second half for South Carolina, that's about to be what you see against Kentucky, because Kentucky's offense is not good. So this is about the offense of Georgia getting crisp, playing well. It doesn't matter what the score is. It does matter what the result is, but it doesn't matter what the score is. You need to play well, play crisp. That's an extremely important thing at this stage. And then you get ready for Florida, where it's all on the line like it always is. Any of you people that think that it's ever not about the result of the Florida game, you're crazy. It's always about Florida. You have to beat the Gators. It's that simple. And Florida's played well. Florida has won, but they turn it over 3 or 4 times against Georgia like they did against Auburn. They play like they did against Auburn. They play like they did against Tennessee. To some degree, they play defensively like they played against LSU. They can get their ass blown out by Georgia. Now, that's what's going to happen if they don't play well. So this is about playing well for Georgia, the Gators, everybody. Everybody's watching. Everybody's still in the top 10. Florida, Georgia, Notre Dame, Alabama, LSU. It's a big party in the SEC and Notre Dame. I mean, everybody wants our swaps, as the Big Short would say. I mean, it's still, about half of the top 10 is the SEC, and Auburn's number 11. So we're going to see how this continues to play out. Georgia needs to continue to get ready for Kentucky. We'll have full coverage with that. Check back to dogpost.com if you're not a member. Subscribe right down there on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast, we appreciate it. You can subscribe on the podcast as well. Thanks, Dean Legge, dogpost.com, DAWGPOST.com. We will see you over on the website.